Okay, we'll get started, and as people join, they'll just catch up with us. I'll start with a little introduction. Just want to say welcome to everyone. Thank you all for being here. I hope you can all hear me okay. For now, if you could just keep yourselves on mute, and then you can unmute yourselves as we start asking questions and start having a discussion. But for now, just keep yourself on mute. You can keep your videos on. So, my name is Emily. I am the Communications and Conference Coordinator for Natural Start Alliance. I'm the one who has been emailing you all with the information for this call. We're really excited that you're all participating on the call today. And just so everyone knows, this call is being recorded, and we do plan to share out that recording in the next couple of weeks. We're really excited, as I said, to be hosting this conversation around nature-based learning in elementary school. Just as we've seen incredible growth in the number of nature-based preschool and kindergarten programs in the US and abroad in the last 5 years, we've recently seen a heightened interest in nature-based learning opportunities in K-5 settings, particularly in public schools. Supporting this learning model in public school settings is just one way that we can broaden participation in outdoor learning, and we're thrilled to see an increased interest from both educators and administrators, as well as caregivers who want to see outdoor learning implemented into their child's elementary curriculum. So how did this conversation get started? Why are we all here today? This was all sparked from a conversation or a question really in our Natural Start Google group posed by Kate, who I believe is either on this call or hoping to be on this call today. So we thank you for that, Kate. And the response to that was one of the most active discussions we've seen on that platform. As a result of that response, we reached out to a couple of individuals who are experienced outdoor educators with much to offer to this conversation, and asked them if they would be willing to facilitate a discussion on the subject. So that's why we have Eliza Minnucci here today. She'll be after I give this brief introduction, Eliza will be taking over and facilitating that discussion and offering her own experience and knowledge. Before we get started with the discussion part, I'd just like to give you guys all a quick overview of who's on the call. Then Eliza will provide a brief introduction and tell you a little bit about her background, and we'll reserve the rest of the time for questions and for a discussion. And we want to ensure that this discussion is a place where everyone feels comfortable to contribute, to ask questions, to share their own experiences. Eliza is here to keep the conversation flowing and to help us identify some key takeaways, but don't feel as if she's the only one that can answer questions. We encourage you all to share. Ultimately, we hope this is only the beginning of the conversation, and we plan to identify steps we can all take away to advance nature-based learning in public schools. So let's get started. I hope you can all see my screen here. Can you see nature-based learning in public schools? All right, great. Let's see. So you can see how much interest there is around this conversation. We have representatives from 22 different states on the call today, and several people from certain areas. A lot of representation from New England area. During our last discussion, we even had representatives from several other countries outside of the US. As you all know, nature-based learning is inherently place-based, so approaches can often be very specific to the area that you're in, your own region. It's exciting to see that the interest in this work spans across not only the whole country, but across the globe. So it's really awesome to see all that interest. We also looked at the questions that you answered for us, which really helps us frame this conversation today. We asked what age you mostly work with, and as you can see, most of you work with early childhood and early elementary, so pre-K, kindergarten, but we know and we appreciate that nature-based learning can and should happen across a person's lifetime. Today, the call is going to be focused on that elementary age. child. Looking at all of the institutions where you come from, it appears that the majority of you currently work in tuition-based or private settings. Today, we'll be exploring the role that institutions such as yours can connect with public schools to expand the work that you're already doing. But we do have representatives with public school backgrounds, or parents, or from nature centers, zoos, aquariums, etc. So there's a lot of great experience, great and diverse experience on this call. Let's see, I'm gonna try to get a guess at how many people. We had quite a few sign up for the call today. I don't know exactly how many we have on, but, or maybe I can see. We have, oh, my computer doesn't want to tell me right now, but there's quite a few of us is really the point. We want to have an open discussion with so many people. We're going to set some ground rules for that conversation. So we just ask that you keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking. That kind of minimizes the background noise. And if possible, you can keep your video on. It's not easy to keep an eye on this many people at once, but it might help us try to see who's trying to jump in, who's trying to speak. You can also use the chat box. There's a chat feature in Zoom, so please use that. If you feel like you're not getting an opportunity to jump into the conversation, but you do have something to share, just type into the chat box. I will pay attention to the chat box as Eliza's kind of guiding the conversation, and I'll try to make sure that those parts of the conversation are included as well. We tried this on the last call and it seemed to work, so you can also raise your hand if you have something you'd like to share. Again, we're keeping an eye on all of the videos and trying to catch everyone. It'll just be one way to try to minimize interruptions. And lastly, and very importantly, we want to learn from each other. There's a lot of people here, a lot of people want to contribute. So we'll try to make sure that everyone gets that chance. And we're just trying this out. It's a bit of an experiment for us. We did one call 2 weeks ago. It went pretty well, and we're hoping that what we learned from that call and this call will really help us to explore whether this is something we'd like to keep doing in the future. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Eliza. I'm going to let her share with you a bit of her background and also kick off the discussion. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Hi. All right, now I can start to see, when we're not sharing the screen, I can start to see some of your faces. I'd love to see your faces if you're able to use video. I think that will help us have a conversation together. I'm going to share my screen for a little bit. So I'm in Vermont right now, rainy, pretty cold, but we're not going to light the fire till at least October, right? Here we go. All right, so I'm in Tunbridge, Vermont. I work for Antioch University, New England. I'm adjunct in their nature-based early childhood certificate program. It's a great institution. I recommend it. And I have a little handbook out there on Amazon called A Forest Days Handbook. And I sort of am, I've got a niche, and that's my niche, the forest day in a public school. And so a lot of the stuff I'll say today is also in that book, perhaps in more detail. But then we're going to learn a lot from other people today too, which will be a much more rich conversation. Let's see. Here's a little tyke in the woods. So I started taking my kindergartners out for a forest day in 2013. And as of yesterday, when I thought about what schools do I know, public schools do I know of that have forest day programs that are teacher-led, this is the list I came up with that are just nearby to me that I'm connected with. So this is the progress, the movement in 7 years in just our little local area, in just the little teacher-led model that I'm familiar with, just to show you what's possible over time. So here's what I want to do with the discussion today. I read through all the questions that you all had written in the survey that was provided before this call. And there were a lot of frequently asked questions. And so I picked 3 of those topics, and I sent you slides because I made the densest, most ugliest slides ever known to man. And I'm not going to spend too much time looking at those with you today, but I thought we could have targeted discussion about funding, then routines, and then sort of standards and validity of doing this in schools. And kind of spend 10 minutes on each of those, just so that we make sure we get to the topics people are interested in. And then we'll move on to sort of the forward movement. How do you get from where you are to where you want to be with the schools in your area, with the kids you know? So then we'll kind of focus on that. And then we'll try to save some time at the end for questions we want to ask each other that haven't come up yet. So I will do some trying to push us along forward and move us on to a new topic, just so that we cover sort of the range of what people want to get out of our discussion today. So here's the very dense slide about funding. And so I've provided here 3 models that I'm familiar with of public school funding. And so if you look at it, I'm sort of most interested in the per student cost, because I think that's a lovely way to compare, just to see what's going on, what can happen when you bring this into a public school, how many kids you can reach, and how cheap it actually is. So the first example has, with hiring an extra teacher to make the ratio better, in the way we did it, was about $200 a student for the entire year. Many classrooms around us in Vermont don't hire anyone extra. And so then that's like $30 a day, because they spend a little money on gear. And then that third one, there's a school that has invested a lot in professional development for their teachers and busing, so they can get to a wooded area that's not covered in poison ivy. And still, that is about $80 per student for an entire year of 1 day a week in the woods. So my question to you, and I'm going to stop the screen sharing for a minute so we can all see each other. I want to open up to you. How much money do you need to do this? And where might that money come from? If you're already doing it, you can share what's going on in your space. If you're not, you can share what questions you have about funding. So how much money do you need to do this? And where might that money come from? Yeah, Bill.
We have a budget of about $25,000, which covers covers salary and excuse me, and the buses, which we have to charter, and our equipment for the year. So that money is all raised by our PTA, and they do an extraordinary job. They fund this plus a number of other programs at the school. So we're very fortunate in that respect. Actually, the bus money comes out of the school budget, and that's around $5,000 a year. So that's in addition to the $25,000. So it's actually more like $30,000.
And can you say where you are?
Oh, we're in Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn, New York. I think that's one of the reasons we can raise that money. So, yeah.
That's a great picture of what it takes.
Anybody else here?
Yeah.
We're from Maumee Valley Country Day School in Toledo, Ohio. And we are just starting a forest school program. And we had a one-time kind of kicking off amount of $3,000. And we've also had some parent donations for our rain suits and for some wool mitten liners and wool socks. But we're very much at the beginning of our journey and still trying to figure out how we can sustain the program in years to come. And a lot of it has to do with funding.
Where people who have received grants or have had school funding, so what we have heard PTAs, PTOs, is a possibility. Where else have people received grants from, or have schools found funding from their own sources?
Our community group received a grant from a local health insurance company as an outreach venture that funded some activities and some materials for 1 year. It was pretty modest, about $14,000.
That's excellent. That's great. That's a great one. So local health insurance company with a philanthropy arm, it sounds like.
Correct. They had a foundation or a community. It was a PR venture for them as well, but also public education, and they wanted to promote healthy activity in the outdoors. And we're in northern Michigan, so the outdoors is a big feature.
That's perfect. A similar one that has funded my programming before is our local banks. Very local banks will give out small local grants, and usually not to the same place year after year. But we got like $2,000 1 year from a tiny local bank. And I think that's something that may be applicable throughout the country, that might be a good source to look at. A way that I've seen schools fund, where they find funding, is there is a principal who figured out that Title IV funding, which is dispersed the same as Title I, I believe, by free and reduced lunch percentage of your school. I don't know, it's not the same amount as Title I funding, but Title IV funding is to improve mental health and school climate and safety. And it says in the language of the law, access to and opportunities for a well-rounded education. And so if you are working or wanting to work with schools, if the administration is interested in supporting it, I know of public school administrators who have used Title IV funding for outdoor programming. That might be an idea. Can people speak to what, there were a lot of questions about funding. I'm curious about if there are people out here who can speak to what they want to fund. What do you not have the funds for yet?
This is Maumee Valley Country Day School again from Toledo, Ohio. We, with our forest school program, have a policy of 2 adults going out with the kids in the forest. And we, in some of our grade levels, we only have 1 homeroom teacher. So at this point in time, we are having to hire substitute teachers to come in and be that second person to go out into the forest with us. So, I mean, I think a long-term goal would be to fund an outdoor educator, preschool through 6th grade, and have that be a sustainable position. We want to offset the cost to our parents because they pay tuition, and so they are already paying a lot of money, and we hate to ask them to provide a lot of expensive equipment. But I mentioned the rain suits. Those were only donated to 1 grade level. So out of our 4 grade levels in the Early Childhood Center, only a quarter of our kids are using the suits. So equipment to keep the kids safe and warm. And then also just our general instructional budget is super low. So we're trying to find things like hand diggers and scoopers and hand saws and all those little manipulatives for the kids to use outside, magnifying glasses, just basic things like those that we're starting from scratch here with. So that's what we're looking to fund for our program.
I imagine that sounds familiar to other people on the call.
Yeah, we in the beginning, this is our 5th year at the Brooklyn New School, and we are a public school. We did the parents ran a GoFundMe project at the beginning of our program to raise money for the rain suits that we purchased, and the manufacturer gave us a nice discount, gave them to us at wholesale. And this year, we're looking to raise money to supply all the teachers with appropriate rangers. Some of them don't have it, and that's sometimes a problem. So that's our next campaign. We may do another GoFundMe campaign or something similar to that.
Should I move on from funding?
Well, Eliza, I'm curious if you can speak to when you were in public school and you started your program, like how did you get funding?
Yeah, so we funded an extra person 1 day a week all year for less than $7,000, and which I think is a great case to be made to administrators and to families, that for a fifth of the school year, I cut our ratio in half for $7,000 that the school didn't even spend. I mean, that's a big bang for the buck, right? And we funded it. There was a local philanthropist, a woman whose family has a foundation, and you write her a letter and she sends you a check sometimes for more than you ask for. And I know it sounds like, oh, don't we wish we all had this? But if you look, you might have it too. And the other funder was a local, a regional fund that was supporting place-based ecology education. And they have been a consistent funder year and year after year, and now support the professional development that Meg Teachout and I provide for teachers in our area. But I believe if you start looking, there are lots of these foundations out there for you to try to reach out. And the suggestion, Meg Teachout, who is sort of my partner in this work, used to work for a nonprofit, and I've learned from her, you can look up on guidestar.org or .com. GuideStar is an organization that publishes information about nonprofits. Think about organizations near you that are in the same sectors, that are in education, that are in nature, natural, environmental, science centers, rehab, animal rehab places. All those nonprofits, they publish where their funding comes from. You can find out where they get funding, and those are the foundations that you may approach. So you kind of sort of backtrack to find out who is funding this type of work, and you might find some new sources of funding for your work.
I want to add that our PTA has a fundraising committee that so a lot of the money is raised through grants. It's not just from the parents themselves. So they have found a number of organizations that are willing to fund this kind of work, and including the local government. Our local assembly people give money to schools for various programs, and we've gotten some money from them too. So.
Yeah, Jess. Yeah. Oh, you're muted. Can you unmute?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm Jess. I'm from a suburb right outside Philadelphia, and I'm just a parent, but my kids are 5 and 7 and went through Forest Kindergarten at a local nature-based preschool. I know you guys are talking about funding, so ideally I'm looking to get this started in my public school, but you guys keep talking about ratios. What is the average ratio of adults to children outside that has been successful in these programs?
I was about 1 to 9 of professional staff to students, and I always tried to have a parent volunteer be there as well. I felt like if I wanted to do small group teacher directed stuff, which I did, that was part of our Forest time. I wanted to be with kindergartners. I wanted to be like 1 to 7 or less, or fewer or less. And for safety, I wanted to be 1 to 10 or less for play and being in a circle around a fire and things like that. I've seen classes that go out together and either use, and that, so they increase their adults, which is nice because having 2 on 20 is nice. But if if one teacher gets involved with one student having a crisis, then you have 1 on 19. Whereas if 4 on 40 sounds a little crazy, but then if you have one student in crisis, you still have 3 on 39. So you see what I'm saying with the numbers kind of game? So I've seen that work really well for folks to have 2 classes go out at the same time and either be in the same space and do things together, or use 2 separate spaces that are somewhat in contact. And that's a way to sort of spread your adults out a little better.
It looks like Anita has something she'd like to share. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oops. There, hopefully you can hear me. I'm a former primary school teacher and middle school teacher, actually. And out back behind the school that I was at, our town owned a 70-acre tree farm. So we have all kinds of trails and outdoor classrooms there. And I'm fortunately in the position where I'm not in the public schools anymore, but I volunteer my time so that I still go back into the school and I bring the teachers out and their classes and help with them. So, don't forget to try to tap into your local volunteers and parents or grandparents or whatever. So like I said, I volunteer my time to do it, but I've been able to get some local foundations to support grants for materials. And also we have a local garden club that has been very supportive and have given grants for scholarships. So don't forget those garden clubs that are in your area. They may be able to support outdoor education programs. So, and I'm from Maine. I don't know if I've said that.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm just starting to try to tap into more of our retirees in our area who they have a lot of knowledge and are very capable. And I see them on naturalist hikes. We end up at the nature center together because we're both interested, and I realize, wait, there's like 8 folks here who are hiking just as well as I can, and they don't work during the day. So that's something I'm trying to figure out how to make those connections, and maybe some of those connections might exist to be had for many of you. I don't know.
Yes.
So I might move us on to routines, and I'll try to share the screen again for a minute because there's questions about what could a forest day or a wild space day, maybe it's a desert day or a meadow day, forest is just what we have in Vermont. But so let me see if I can. Oh, my comment on this was we were talking about how much things cost, but this is priceless. This is an actual kindergarten class in Vermont on their forest day. All right, so routines, what could a forest day look like? The part in green is all the outside time, so it's around 4 hours. And so my question for you is, what do you imagine your nature time with kids could look like, or what does it look like so far? And anybody can answer that. Maybe you just want to read for a minute. Yeah, Bill.
We don't have as much time as this, since we actually have to put car seats on our bus to take them to the park, which isn't that far away, but it takes a long time to prepare. So it's a lot like this, though. We do a similar kind of day where we meet in the classroom before we go. We go 2 classes at a time. That comes to 36 kids. And so we get everybody in one classroom. We have a little meeting about what might be the topic for the day, or the question of the day is a better way to put it, because usually the kids come up with something they're interested in that we want to follow up on. during that meeting, we might show them a little video of something that we took during the time before to kind of spark their memory, and get them thinking about the day. Then it takes about 40 minutes to go downstairs, get on that bus, and get to the park. So we start out right with lunch. It's early for them, but they seem to do better when they get there and we just eat right away. And we'll have a closing circle at the end. Actually, I'm sorry, I should backtrack. We do the sit spots when we first get there. We have a little meeting around. We have a special tree that we meet around, and then we do our sit spots, and then they go to their lunch. Afterwards, we'll put out a snack that they're free to come and get whenever they feel like it. And the kids are on their own to explore and play as they will. And our role really is to stand back and watch, and to take notes for our future use, and to really try and see what it is that the kids are doing and what they're really interested in, so that we can kind of push that forward during the week at school. Now, it is just a forest day, so we don't get to go more than once a week. And in fact, because there are three pre-K classes, we alternate. We take 2 classes one week and then 2 classes the next. So they have 2 weeks on and 1 week off. But it is nice that all 3 classes get to mix together that way. We will end the day with we'll gather around the tree again, and we'll talk about things we noticed or things that were of interest to the kids. And we have some songs and routines that we do, little rituals that we do. And we get back on the bus, and we're back to school by about 1:30 or 2 o'clock. So we don't get there until around 10 in the morning. So we have only at the most 2.5 or 3 hours to be out there. To answer the question before about ratios, it's about the same ratio, about 1. We want to make sure that we have at least 1 adult for every 10 kids. We have a teacher and a paraprofessional in each of the classrooms, so that's 2 adults right there, and myself. So we have it almost covered with just the teachers, but if we'll typically have 2 or 3 parents that'll come along on each trip, which is nice. Sometimes there are actually too many parents that volunteer, and we're trying to figure out ways of keeping the number of adults down a little bit. So that's our routine.
Thank you. I'm going to stop the share so I can see more of you on the video. But I just want to encourage more sharing about what you do or your hopes of what you will do. Yes, yeah. Magnolia Preschool, you're listed as.
Yeah, we're Magnolia Nature Preschool. So we're from Alabama. And we run a Monday through Friday nature school. So the kids come in at about 7:30 every morning. We have arrival. They get their sunscreen on, backpacks together, pack their lunches, and we all sign in for the day. And then we head to breakfast. After breakfast, we have our circle time. So that's where we talk about the weather and whatever we want to focus on for that morning. So that's our intentional, circle space. And then we head out and about and we explore. We usually eat our lunch out on the trail. Sometimes we'll come back for lunch, and we won't get back until about 12:45. And then we change because we're usually really dirty, and then wet. And then we come inside for personal reading time, and then read aloud time and rest time. And then the kids get picked up by 1:30. We also have an aftercare program that goes until 5 o'clock. And we were thinking what really sparked our interest in this webinar was we were thinking about wouldn't it be cool if we partnered with a local classroom. So yeah, but that's what our basic day is. Our ratios are typically 1 to 5. So yeah. That's a little bit of what we do down here. And we partner with Head Start, and they slot fund us for each child. And then we also have a couple students that pay privately. So we have those options. And Head Start's really flexible with us. Really great with working with us. They make tons of exceptions. We're a partnership, not a classroom, so we don't have all the same rules and guidelines as a typical Head Start classroom does, which is really great.
I heard about you guys because somebody who worked there for a while took a class at Antioch, I think, Melissa Frederick or something.
Yeah, great.
And I thought that Head Start partnership is awesome.
Yeah,
if that could be replicated more frequently.
Yeah, for sure.
Wonderful. So
Yeah,
glad to hear it.
It's really lucky.
Oh. Anita, did you want to share your routine, what you do, or?
I can.
Sure.
Okay. Well, the question that I have is, do most public schools, for people that are here being represented, follow a full day type of format? Because one of the challenges that I faced, like I said, I'm a volunteer who goes in. I don't go in necessarily on a regular basis. And a lot of the teachers that I'm dealing with are really facing a lot of pressures on, meeting national standards, and they're really not able to dedicate a full day to being outside. So if I'm lucky, I can get them for an hour or an hour and a half. So I will create, some sort of activity or whatever at this point in time. And I'll make a sign-up sheet and the teachers can sign up. And so I'll usually have them for an hour and a half or so, because most of them feel like that's all they can, that's all they have administrative support for getting the kids outside. So we don't, like I said, I don't do a full day of programs with one class. I'll just take multiple classes out. And I think that really helps the public school teachers, because a lot of them, I think, are uncomfortable with being out in the forest with a group of, in this case, anywhere from 10 to 20 kids by themselves. So I'm really fortunate to be able, I do the activity because of the background that I have in education and as a master naturalist and a bunch of other stuff. But so I will do the activity, and then the teachers kind of support the activity and do more of the dealing with the students, and if there's any challenges or issues or whatever. So like I said, I was just curious about other people that are on, if they have more of a typical class period schedule where they take kids out rather than having it be a full day program.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
We offer a program in Philadelphia for a Title I school. So last year the program began. And in that setting, it's very similar to what you're talking about, Anita, where the teachers they're enthusiastic, but they have really minimal experience with news-based education. And although they're fortunate in that they can walk across the street to a local arboretum that's within the city limits, it's amazing. The teachers are very concerned about test scores and taking away time from things that they're going to be held accountable for. So over the course of the year, as the program unfolded, of course, they loved it. They saw the value in it. But I think a primary concern
Did you all lose Monica?
I did.
Yes.
Not sure if she can hear us.
Maybe you could try to chat her.
Yes, I'll do that, and then maybe she'll want to jump in and say something in the chat.
The public schools I work with do a variety of things. Some teachers, they commit to 2 hours a week because that's what they feel like they can fit in. A lot of it has to do with the scheduling of related arts and lunch, and if they have lunch duty and can't make it. There's Monica again.
But now you're on mute, Monica.
Okay. Do you want to finish what you were saying, Monica?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I got dropped, but yeah, just that it is really challenging because that combined with the lack of funding, and the very traditional setup for most of the most of the schools at least that we've encountered, makes it challenging. And so for us, we feel like we want it to be a professional development model where teachers who are already there in those settings get trained so that they can gradually become more competent to do it on their own. Is, the busing, that's how are we ever going to keep that a real and sustainable way for schools all over to have access to funds like that. I love the idea of having some kind of a science or outdoor educator that's a dedicated position. And in the case of the school that we were in, they were fortunate that they had that. And so that is the primary person who's carrying on the work. But it is challenging. It's really challenging to balance all those needs, especially when there's some support and enthusiasm for it, but it's not like you have a big parent body that's behind you. It's not, so anyways, that's just, but the short answer to the original question was yes, it's done in a modified day. So it's meeting the needs of the teachers in the school.
And I don't know if you were at the Natural Start conference, I would just say drip, drip, drip,
Right.
and start where you can, and then more likely than not, it will expand and grow. Did you want to say something? Yeah, in Magnolia.
Yeah, sorry. Also, my name's Julie.
We'll just call you Magnolia. Okay.
And that's Annie. I guess there's, speaking of like a modified day, that made me think of a program. Before I worked at Magnolia, Magnolia is part of a greater community of Camp McDowell, and they have an environmental center. And I did short-term programs with them where we just spent an hour and a half in each classroom at a local school. And we did recycling programs with them. And they were, we generally didn't actually get to get them outside, but we did like interactive explorative programs where we taught them all about recycling, and like through their preschool and all the way up through their high school, which was really awesome. And that was like kind of an example of what y'all was saying of that modified, like just coming in for a little bit of their day to do something. And we got a grant to do that through Arley Women's Club. So that's how we did that. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the naturalists coming in from a nature center is a model I see in Vermont in a variety of depths. Like we have the Vermont Institute of Natural Sciences is a rapture rehabilitation center, but it's kind of almost getting to be like a bird zoo. It's really beautiful, but they send educators into the schools and they have contracts for year-long programs, but it's pretty drop-in. Like we have this lesson, we'll drop in and hopefully the teacher might take it on for themselves, but it's like an hour and a half once every 2 months or something like that. Not super frequent. And then Amy Butler at the North Branch Nature Center is working really frequently a Forest Day model every week or every 2 weeks with 10 public schools. And they've been grant funded and schools are paying to have them come in. And it's sort of part of the way they teach science is having the naturalists come in and have this very tight partnership with the teachers. And the teachers are absolutely equal partners in the delivery and the planning and really own it. And the idea is that they may not need North Branch Nature Center naturalists coming in forever, but many of them really enjoy the partnership and they keep it going. And she's worked with a lot of schools for 10 years. So there's sort of a spectrum of models that can work, and you just have to start where you can start. You can't always just turn the faucet totally on, and that's okay. That's all right.
And can I jump in and just say, I think Amy's on the call. I think the Amy that's on the call is Amy Butler. And she facilitated our last call, and the program that Eliza's talking about has been going on. It's in its 10th year this year. So working with 10 public schools. I think Amy would, yes, hopefully she can jump in and say, great, just that it took.
And surprise pop-in appearance by Rachel Larimore. Never know you'll find her.
But Amy, maybe you want to speak to that, just like where you started, because you don't get to where you're at quickly, where you're at now, like in.
So where, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So where did we start? We started with 2 teachers who knew what a need was in their school and in their classroom community, and that felt that spending extended periods outdoors on a consistent basis would help their students. And it wasn't necessarily about meeting NGSS or Common Core, it was more social emotional learning and within that context. And that's where it really started. And I think what I would add to the discussion is that the relationship building with the teachers is of the utmost importance and is pertinent to the success of these programs. I have yet to see a child that doesn't engage immediately or soon engage in participating in their classroom community outdoors on some kind of nature immersion experience. It's the teachers, administrators, and the adults. And so once you're able to bring them on board, then you really have this kind of intertwined, really strong bond and possibility for it extending through the school. So I hope that answers the question that you asked. But I'd really work on the teachers first and the administration.
And that might be a good segue for my next most dense ever slide. So I'm going to share again and move us towards standards and then a discussion about how you make the case to public schools that this is worthwhile. So let's see if I can get that up. First, relax with this face, and then, so this is, I went through the routines I had talked about. I didn't look at the teacher directed time because that's gonna pull in a ton of standards, right? And that's gonna be really targeted and you can decide what that's gonna be. But just being a decent teacher during the routines that happen every week, that you just roll through them. For kindergarten, there are over 30 standards I think you hit every week on your Forest Day that are just embedded in drawing and writing and reading and playing and building and exploring and talking about in and during the outdoor day. So you could perhaps make a crazy document like this to give to folks you're trying to convince. There's one idea. I'm gonna take it away because it's a little overwhelming in terms of something to look at. And then ask about other ways I had words. How you communicate that nature-based time supports academics. And this is something I feel like you should all have something to share. Like, why are you on this call? Why is this important? Why does this belong in public schools? Go for it, Bill.
I'll go for it. I really think that the best way to convince people to do this is to bring them to the forest and have them observe kids and see just how much learning is going on. Oftentimes you meet people who say, "Oh, they're just going out there. It's just like a playground. They're just playing out there." But that just playing we have to reframe that for people and get them to recognize how much learning is happening through play and how much we as teachers can bring those things into the classroom and help the kids do their explorations further. If they have a question that they've encountered outside, then it's our job as teachers to bring something from outside into the classroom on those other days when we're not there. And all of those things, they spark so much language, right? And it's so language rich that if you just start there when you're explaining the value, you can see how many conversations are started between peers, which is a very important skill for kids to learn. And we're working with pre-K kids, so their language development is going from 0 to 60 over the whole year. And it's just wonderful to see how much conversation is sparked by being outside. And also, if you look for it, there's a lot of math going on too, where kids may be counting things or maybe trying out different relationships. I think that, like I say, just getting people to think in the simpler terms about it. What's the value of having children come out and form a relationship with nature? And in this time in our human history, it is vitally important, right? That children bond with nature. And so once you enter into the science of it, and you think about what are the experiences that young children need in order to be interested in science, in order to continue their curiosity, it's these kinds of real life experiences that they need. They can't do this inside a classroom. It's just not possible. They need to be outdoors, and they need to be getting their hands in the dirt and just experiencing nature firsthand. So,
Can I add something?
yeah. Oh, everybody, this is Amy, a teacher.
Hi. I wanted to go this summer, but I couldn't get a ride up and back. I'm jealous, and I've been hearing from Bill what you guys have been up to. I'm just thinking about documentation and, kind of like the Reggio type of documentation, taking lots of documentation, putting it up with walls with their children's what they've said. Sometimes typing up what's going on if they don't really understand what's going on, so that the adults in the room can come and take a look. I also think it's really powerful to look at videos and having discussions about what do you think these kids are learning?
Bill had a workshop at the Natural Start Conference and had incredible video that was super moving of the students he's worked with. And perhaps, I'm on the inside of this echo chamber, but iMovie is not all that hard to use. And if you had video of your kids and you put a little ticker tape at the bottom that says Common Core Standard, speaking and listening with purpose, or, and it flies across the bottom as that thing is happening. So you were just saying, you're the translator. I agree. I think video is really, really valuable in sharing what's going on. And if you even have to subtitle it for the non-teachers around, it's not that hard to do.
I think that's the way in the public schools. And then once you've got them hooked, then you can get a little broader into the deep reasons why we all know it's super important,
I'd just like to point out, looks like Sam added some good references over in the chat box that you guys can check out. It's always good to be aware of the studies and the research that's already out there as well. And I'm going to share another story. This is not really a link to research per se, but there is a teacher here in Chicago. I live in Chicago, a very urban area, where teachers, especially in certain neighborhoods, face a lot of challenges to getting outside. And this story here that I just shared is about a teacher who lives in one of the least green neighborhoods in Chicago. But there's an increased effort to put some nature play spaces in some of these neighborhoods in Chicago. So she would use that space. And she did a research study on the language. She compared the language her students were using. Her name's Jessica Fong. She did a comparison of the language her students were using indoors, and then on like the regular school playground, and then in the natural space. And it's super interesting. So I just wanted to point you to that as well. She did that, and I think that certainly helped support taking her students outside in an area where it's not super easy to get that sort of support. So
I think at this point, I want to move it towards talking about moving your programming forward wherever you are and getting towards where you want to be. And so I'm going to try something. If you can possibly be on video, it works with video the best. And that is, I'm going to ask you a question and have you write down your answer on paper and show it to your screen, right? And you can read that, right? You gave me a nod. It's the right way, because it looks backwards to me, so I panicked that this wasn't going to work, but I double checked, it works. So the question is, what do you want to be happening? That's not happening yet. But distill it to 3 to 5 words so that you can write it down and show it. Okay, so what do you want to be happening? You know, your pie in the sky dreams for your work. And then whenever you're ready, if you can show it. If you want to type something in the message chat because you don't have a piece of paper and pen, then, oh, there, more people. Hello. And leave it up there because it'll take us a while to read all of them once they're up. Oh, I love it. I'll hold mine up.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, what do you want to be happening? Like, what's the future look like if your ideals come to be? You know, you're on this call to try to keep pushing your programming and your work forward. Amy, you got to move yours to the side a little bit. Yeah, that's it.
This feels like an intelligence test.
we can see it. We can see it now.
It's hard when it's backwards, right?
Are you saying
I'm not holding anything up, so I can read some of what's up already.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Connection with nature for kids by learning outdoors. So connection to the natural world. Administration support. Spread the practice. Every kid outside every day. Joyful kids. Kids in the woods. You have to bring that a little close. Accommodating more kids outside. A theme of more of this happening, having it spread. Awesome. Did we get everyone who has something to share? Families out in nature together. Sam shared in the chat box. So family engagement as well. Awesome. Anyone else have something to share they didn't yet? That's great.
All right, thank you. Now I want you to think about, so you've distilled, that's not just your elevator speech, that's like your, I don't know, pogo stick speech where you just 3 words. Now I want you to think about what you already have. So what resources do you have? And I'm gonna show a slide to try to elicit some ideas. Not that one. Not this one. This one. Okay, so we were answering, what do you want to be happening? But now you want to start with what you have to work with and trying to be really positive and strengths-based, right? What are the sparks of enthusiasm that exist where you are that you can tap into, and that, you know, you can feed your little fire if you gather those sparks together? So think about, you could write down for yourself, who is the parent? There might be one parent who is a supporter, who is interested in this, and write that down, like that name, not just parents, but the specific person. Or who is one teacher who is most interested? You think there might be one teacher, I don't have the whole school on board, but there's one teacher I could work with. Or do you have a fine piece of wild space that's gonna be a place that once you get somebody there, it's gonna start to grow because it's such a good place. And then think about who funds ecology or education nonprofits in your region. And maybe you don't know the answer to this yet, but you might tomorrow. And then what about what local cultural connections could be amplifying if you got your forces together? So in Vermont, we got a great special Venn diagram of hunting and farming and sugaring and fishing overlapping with like the back to the land culture. So that overlaps in a beautiful way for nature-based education. And there may be ways to tap into that. If maybe it's more of an interest in health and fitness that is really prevalent in your region or on the minds of people right now, that's something you can collaborate with. Are people really interested in youth empowerment? Is the angle asking kids where they would like to learn and amplifying their voice and working with them? Are there arts organizations that are interested in natural art or photography or sculpture that you could connect with? So I want you to be writing down these things you have, the things you already have, the next school that might be interested that you want to work with. Someone gave you a name of someone who might be interested in this, or you just recently learned about a new funder, or you've got a parent who's really excited. So I want you to write those down so that we can also share with each other some of the strengths that we are going to be able to capitalize once we get off this call and think about where are we going next. So I'm going to do that too. And I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see everybody's video. So again, what resources do you have? Where are the sparks of enthusiasm that you can connect with? Amazing outside space adjacent to the school. That is a super resource, not to be wasted, right? You can do it. You can all come up with something.
And I know you're all thinking, and Eliza gave you some really, really awesome questions to think about. Something that I think is worth mentioning too from our last call that Amy brought up is thinking about what the needs are within your community as well. I love the question that Eliza posed about like what is the I don't know, connection, the local cultural connection that you can make. But Amy was also talking about a teacher that came to her, a kindergarten teacher that came to her and said, I'm really noticing that the fine motor skills of my kindergartners have gone down. They're just not there like they used to be, or there's a great social emotional need in your community that you can identify. So that's another really great way to think about it. A little different, but just another thing that I really liked from that Amy brought up last time too.
Absolutely. All right, here's mine. Shout out to Amy who's on the call. And all these other colleagues of mine, somewhat in the New England area, Rachel happens to be in Vermont for the weekend, who are getting together to talk about, we're set up a little overnight for ourselves to figure out what more we can do. So I have this strong professional network, and we keep lifting each other up and trying to figure out how can we do better and how can we do more. So what else do you guys have? I saw really good space by your school. Amazing wild space. Talented funds finder. Well, we all want to find that person. Building connections. I see some specific places you've added. That's perfect. Local culture of steward of, I can't read that word. What's it say?
We kind of have, I just popped in.
Tell us, yes.
We kind of have this like local culture of, a lot of kids use the earth and are like familiar with being outside, hunting and fishing, but without that sort of added respect or like stewardship aspect of it.
So connect it, yeah.
Connecting those and just like growing on what they already maybe enjoy, things like that. Yeah.
I have yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go.
This is Stephanie. Yeah, sorry I haven't been able to pitch in more. I'm actually driving to Vermont right now, so I haven't really been participating. But I have a preschool-based program in Madison, Wisconsin, and I've thought a lot about how the program is perceived in the community, and my partner and I have the intention, which is why we're on the call, to bring it to the public school system. And Madison right now has a pretty big focus on racial equity and Black excellence. And there's a message, in the school board that, anything pertaining to Black excellence or promoting racial equity has very strong support right now. And there have been some perceptions that, access to like nature-based programming or I guess like outdoor recreation is sort of like a white privilege kind of thing. So we feel like we're battling against that perception a little bit. So in my mind, just talking about these connections, that's something that I've been focusing on a lot. My local, I have a kindergartner, and he attends a school that is about 70% minority. The school qualifies for free breakfast and free lunch, and it seems like that lens, has a pretty big, would have a pretty big impact in our community. So I was just curious if anybody else, has similar perceptions or barriers or ways that they're trying to promote, equitable access to outdoor programming and saying this is important for everybody and not just, certain kids, I guess.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's definitely something our program has put a lot of thought into. And when we first started, it did not take long to realize that we would not, our local community we're living in an impoverished area, and we can't support they can't pay privately to come to our nature preschool. And
right.
The specific individuals who do are going to want to a more academic program. So figuring a way to serve our local community, that's where our partnership with Head Start kind of started. And
I'm really curious about that too, because I'm curious about that connection. So maybe we'll have to connect offline. But so we thought about ways to evolve our program and try to not just have a private program that's tuition based, but be able to serve all kids through different partnerships, and public school being one of them. But sorry, please continue.
Oh no, yeah, perfect. So with this, it's just like showing our value to people who would want to pay private tuition, and then also forming that partnership is what allowed us to serve our community. So that was all.
Cool.
Yeah, you had mentioned the partnership with Head Start. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more on that and how that works for you guys.
They slot fund us per child. So they, for every child that's in our program through them, they give us a certain amount of money. And so essentially paying their private tuition. Do you have specific questions about it?
Yeah, it sounded like you said they were very supportive of your program, of the outdoor program. And
yeah.
I'm curious about that aspect of it.
Yeah, they, when we first reached out to them about this, they were really supportive of our program and still have been. They come in and give us graded visits, and we get 100s every time. They see a lot of value in our program, which we're really fortunate for. It's the Community Action Partners of North Alabama is who funds our Head Start programs. So,
can you make that data available? The evaluations that Head Start gives the program? I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like teapot evaluations. I can make it available to you guys. I can put it on the email that
would be great if you can do that.
Yeah. And then with us, when we first started with them, we just kind of talked about, we had a list of non-negotiables. So things that we weren't willing to bend on. So we needed to be mostly outside. We weren't going to have a 6 foot, I can't remember what size fence they have you have around your
bodies of water.
Yeah, bodies of water and your.
Because we have
classroom.
A river and a lake and everything. And another good thing was potty training, because Head Start doesn't have. They allow kids that are not potty trained, and I don't know if you guys can imagine changing diapers in the woods, but it's not the best thing. So we had to, set a hard and fast rule, we cannot accept kids that aren't potty trained and all kinds of stuff like that. But they've worked really well with us.
We've just been really lucky in that way.
Yeah.
But because we're a partnership and not a classroom, so we have our own staff rather than Head Start staff. We do have a couple really awesome Head Start representatives who come in and work with us fairly regularly. And they'll bring in and fill out certain paperwork that we help them do. But it's not nearly as intensive. I don't know what all a normal Head Start classroom has to do, honestly, but I've been told we're really lucky. Yeah, so that's kind of how our partnership.
Thank you. Amy, did you?
I saw our parent was putting up as a strength the love, I think that's right. They shifted around on me, so I might be confused about the love kids have for being in nature, something along those lines, right?
Enthusiasm.
Yeah? Yes, enthusiasm, right? And that might be what you have to start with. And so figuring out a way to leverage that. And I saw that Rachel wrote in on the chat that a really big driver for public schools is parent influence. And I know sometimes parents feel like I am not getting done what I want to get done, but don't give up, please, because I know there are teachers there who are really rooting for you to make some breakthroughs. So now I think I'd want to just talk about, I have some specific ideas about ways to promote, get started, get public schools thinking about this. And I would throw a few of those out and then see if anybody else has other ways. I think represented on this call, we have a really qualified volunteer providing something and offering it to teachers and sort of doing the brunt of the work and having it just be small. That's been represented. And I think that's a great starting point, is to find someone who can do that volunteer work. Another one is showing videos. And the way I got into this was some parent gave a copy of a documentary about a Swiss forest kindergarten to my principal, and he showed it as an option in the library one day after school. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, this is brilliant. This is what I should do. If you were able to host a showing of a video like that, there's one about a couple of Vermont schools called The Best Day Ever. There's another one that's going to come out soon about a New Hampshire school that is starting to use their woods more and more, and they're K-8, I think. And I'm sure Natural Start will publicize that as soon as it's available. So, and doing it frequently, so that you have some chances that people will just have their eyes on some of this programming. I would encourage Bill to put his video together and charge us all $12 to see it, and we'll all show it to our schools too. So offering volunteering, any kind of volunteering you can do, finding grant funding so that you don't have to volunteer if you're a nature center or something, supporting something really small, finding one teacher to work with. So like if you are showing videos and you see someone in the audience who's like, ding, okay, that is the person you could work with maybe and start to build something. Those are a few of my starting ones that might work. Any other ideas folks on the call want to throw out as this might be your foot in the door? Or questions about feet in the doors?
We've begun to reach out to other schools in our district and trying to identify teachers, individual teachers who are interested in doing programs like this. And so we have a sort of informal group that started. We've met once, but we plan to meet a few times during the year and share our ideas, back and forth. And I think that idea of finding one, you have to find one teacher who's really committed to the idea, who will be a very enthusiastic supporter and proponent for the program, who can bring it to their principal and say, this is what I've been doing, and this is what I see is the change in my kids. I think that's a great way to get more public school teachers on board. I think maybe public school teachers have a little more freedom to do things than they sometimes think they do. If they come to their administrator with a good idea, oftentimes they may be surprised.
I agree. A thing in our area where we have been able to find teachers who are interested in fact, at first they found us and said, can we come visit your program? We had a lot of people asking and coming to visit. And press release. So if you are having a forest day or any kind of thing, get a little bit of local press. That definitely helped other teachers see the idea of what might happen. So teachers came to us. So we run, like Bill was just describing, we've facilitated a professional learning community. We're in our 5th year. The first year, we had 6 people join us. This year we have 19. So we have, at this point, and through a little bit of work with one school in specific where we worked with the entire staff, we have about 60 teachers, sort of alumni, that we've had a professional learning community model where we facilitate a little bit of chatting and talking about a topic like routines or funding or connecting to standards or safety. And we provide food, we bring dinner, and we meet throughout the school year. So we make this community. So even if you are the only one teacher in your school who is really dedicated with this, once a month you get together with other teachers who are like you. And that seems to be bucket filling and sort of sustaining for people. And so there are quite a few classrooms who now have been doing their Forest Day for 5 years and just started taking those first steps together with a little group. And they met together and shared challenges and successes. That model of gathering those teachers together every once in a while to fan the fires and then letting them go back to their schools has really supported the sustainability of this in a lot of different places and spread the idea, I think. So finding a way to offer that connecting time for interested teachers can really help too. And yeah, we have someone, you raised your hand. I'm looking at you on my screen. You can't tell I'm looking at you, right? Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I have a question about if basically like safety concerns and weather concerns. I'm new to this public school district and they are very concerned about non-ideal weather and even safety on the playground. And it's only been a few weeks into the school year and I've already had to talk to the principal about Why are my children coming home and telling me they can't touch the grass? Why can't they climb a tree? How do people work around if there are state rules against weather and safety?
Anybody else want to take that one on? It's hard. That's hard. So some of my recommendations would be to, let's see, you can write up protocols for specific hazards. So you might say, okay, so in this culture I've just landed in at this school, we're really scared about below 30 degrees for whatever reason. And it may not be something you personally are scared about, but you want to find a place to meet. So you could write a protocol that says when it's below 30, this is what every kid will be wearing. You can, if you can possibly enlist a physician, a pediatrician, to provide some weight to the idea that it is healthy to be outside, and that there are very healthy ways to be outside when it's 0 degrees. You know, that can be fine to play outside when it's 0. But if you actually had something in writing, that might be a way that helped people feel more comfortable. Or with stick play, if you wanted to write out, work with a teacher who might be interested in trying to develop it, or find someone local, and trying to find somebody who works at summer camps, or a Boy Scout leader, or someone who is connected to that type of activity somehow, and writing specific protocols that may make other people feel like there's more structure to what's going on, and feel like they understand the boundaries. That may make them feel better about taking risks. Just to make a plug, Antioch University has a week-long summer intensive class about benefit risk assessment, mitigating hazards, and confronting that in a, with safety in mind, but also understanding the benefits to taking risks and being confronted by risks.
Thank you. That's really helpful. And it also reminded me, in the Philly area, there are doctors that are prescribing nature, so I can tap into them. So thank you.
This is Sam in Northern Michigan. We're sort of a community-oriented outdoor activity, and one of the things that we try to do to help overcome that fear of nature is just publicize the activities that we do with families a lot, so that people will see in the paper or on Facebook and things like that, at 15 below 0, families come out and build snow shelters and have fun and eat hot chocolate standing in a snowdrift, and that the kids can walk down into the mud and wade in the river with lots of adult supervision, and do all these outdoor activities to sort of make it normalized, that it's healthy and doable to get outdoors.
It's true. Yeah, using social media, like influencing, that's not a bad idea. Having lots of pictures of kids playing outside and smiles, and that can help. That can help the culture shift a little bit, I think. Yeah, Bill and company.
This is Amy.
Now there's 2 more. We have our principal Anna and my co-teacher, colleague Jacqueline. But I don't know who did this particular video, but we have a video of our kids going across the seasons, video of that. And I think that that's really powerful for people to see what kids are doing in that really cold weather and in the rain, which is, just to see those discoveries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think weather is so worth the trouble, right? It's so compelling to be outside in different environments, and watching the same space, really changed by seasons or rain or snow. It's worth it. I know it can be hard to get there, but it's worth it. I think we're coming to the end of our time, so I think maybe I should see if there are any last burning questions. And if not, turn it over to Emily to sort of wrap us up. And I can't totally see everybody, so you can just speak up if you want to.
I kind of took over the screen there. I thought we were sharing some really good ideas and I wanted everyone to be able to kind of see them.
Yeah, no, great. Great. I think if there aren't burning questions, I'll pass it over to Emily. Thanks.
Great. And I just want to take a couple minutes just to wrap up at the end and share some resources that are already out there. I know that there were a lot of questions. We were talking about, or we asked the question, what kind of supports would kind of help you continue to do this work and do all of these things that we've discussed here. And one thing was definitely more resources, knowing what's out there. So I just wanted to take a moment and share some of the things that we already have. So I'm going to point you to the Natural Start website, where we've pulled together a few resources around nature-based learning in public schools. On our site, I code the link down here. Obviously, you can't click that, but it's pretty easy to navigate to on the website. We have a post about nature-based early learning in public schools that kind of pulls together a bunch of resources. So there you can find a recording of a webinar we did last year on Nature Days in K-3 that had a few teachers, Eliza included, who talked about their experiences doing this in public schools, so straight from public school teachers. We also have a Forest Days evaluation. So talking about that documentation and data, that's a great resource for sharing the impact that this type of programming can have. We have recordings of a webinar that Amy Butler did with another outdoor educator on steps anyone can take to begin taking their students outdoors. As well as several member spotlights, which is just what we call when we highlight Natural Start members who are doing this. Some member spotlights that are personal stories about public schools that are doing this, and feature stories that kind of get at how do you do this. So articles that were written by members of our community. All of these resources are under this blog post titled Nature-Based Early Learning in Public Schools. You should be able to find it on our website. So that's one place to go. And we know there's so many other resources out there. So something that we've asked Amy and Eliza to do after this call, we'll be sharing the recording of this call as well as some takeaways. They're gonna chat after this and figure out what were those big takeaways from both of these conversations. So we'll share that along with these resources and other resources that have been put out there by other organizations that are doing this and have a lot of expertise. Another resource that's going to be available soon that I think is really applicable is just hearing a lot of the questions that people were asking. Our Nature-Based Preschool Professional Practice Guidebook is going to be available very, very soon. We've been working hard to get it up on the Natural Start website, so you'll be able to get that. The guidebook is organized into 4 areas of practice: teaching, environments, safety, and administration. It describes the practices that define nature-based learning in the US. It was developed by and reviewed by nature-based education leaders across the US. A lot of really great input into this publication. Like I said, we're in the process of making it available on Amazon in the hopes that it will ship quickly to anyone who wants it. Though this resource was developed for nature-based learning in preschools, the practices are very applicable to K-5 settings. Some of those questions that came up today about weather and about ratios are addressed in this guidebook, and I think will be a great foundation for a lot of you. And again, can be adapted for your setting, a variety of settings. And we think it's going to be a great tool for advocacy as well, which is a big piece of what we're talking about. You can use it to advocate for nature-based learning with audiences like public school administrators who might not be very familiar with outdoor education for young children. It provides a great overview of nature-based education and how to operate programs that are safe, effective, and inclusive. Again, big topics that came up today. We will certainly let everyone know as soon as that's available. We're very excited to get it out there, and we hope that it'll help you expand on your nature-based programs. And the guidebook, the preschool guidebook I was just talking about, is a really great companion to a free resource that is downloadable right now from the NAAE. The Guidelines for Excellence in Early Childhood Environmental Education Programs. So that's a PDF that you can download right now, and together they provide a great overview of what environmental education for young children looks like and the specifics of how high quality nature-based programs operate. The guidelines series, not just early childhood, but there's guidelines for excellence in community engagement, and many more. I can't name them all right now, but they're all available for free. So definitely check that out as well. And like I said, some next steps. Amy and Eliza will put together some high-level takeaways. We're going to share resources from Natural Start and other organizations, share the recording of this conversation for more people to who weren't able to be here today, and use all of this information to kind of reevaluate what kind of supports are needed, because we're very excited about the interest in nature-based early learning, not just at the preschool level, but into elementary school as well. So thank you all so much for being here. I know it was a real marathon of a call, but we really appreciate you all participating, taking the time out of your very busy schedules and helping us kind of talk through these really important topics. Lastly, if you have any questions or any follow-up, you can always contact me. Pretty easy to remember. My email is emily@naaee.org. If I can't answer the question for you, I can help to point you to someone who can. And we just encourage you to continue to use the resources you already have at your disposal. That Google group, the start of this entire conversation, you can continue to pose questions on there. It's a great group. And then another kind of online professional community that you might find helpful is the NAAE Early Childhood Environmental Education Group on EE-Pro. EE-Pro is a platform, just an online platform for professionals to connect, to discuss, to pose questions, to share resources. It's absolutely free to join, and we have a couple of amazing moderators for the early childhood group. So it's just another place to keep talking about this, keep the conversation going. So I'll leave you with that. And again, thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you so much to Eliza for facilitating this conversation, and to Amy a couple of weeks ago for the same. So thank you.